Welcome to True Wellness with Dr. D, the podcast where we explore what it takes to live with vitality, balance, and purpose. I am Dr. D, and each week I'll bring you powerful tools, inspiring stories, and expert insights to help you thrive in every area of your life. From health and wellness to mindset and navigating life's challenges, this podcast is your guide to creating a life of true well-being. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode. I am excited to have with me today Kate Fessler, who, by the way, I've known Kate for a while, and she is an extraordinary human being who just stands for people's greatness and what's possible for them in their lives. She, by the way, is the Chief Empowerment Officer, CEO, new meaning, right? So the CEO at changingcourse.com. And Kate is she is the person you go to when you are dealing with burnout and uncertainty and just looking to really find that pathway forward with purpose and clarity. I think that, Kate, is where your expertise lie, right?
Yes. Thank you, Danielle.
You're welcome. I'm glad to have you here because, so the truth is, Kate, we're here talking about, how do we empower people to have their health and their wellness? How do we get to the underlying root causes of people's issues with their health? And one of the major things that happens in this day and age is we find people they're burnt out, they're stressed out, they're, overwhelmed by all the different demands of life. And that then has a real physiological impact. So I'm glad to have you here today so that we can talk about and strategize, like, how do we step outside of those places dealing with things like burnout and overwhelm and stress and kind of feeling like, oh my gosh, I've got these big changes in my life. What do I do and how do I navigate them?
Yeah. So people are dealing with so much, since the pandemic, right? That was the biggest change for everyone that impacted people in many different ways, but especially in their work lives.
Yes.
Because we kind of had this whiplash from, stay at home and we want to do everything we can possibly for you to keep you happy and this and the other thing, to get yourself back to the office. If you moved 200 miles away, too bad, right? Like, companies have kind of shifted into maybe we don't need everybody again. And so people are feeling that stress of, they're overworking. They're stressed about, am I even going to keep my job? How am I going to get to my work? And it's really impacting their physical health because all of that, stress really over, I have to stay up late because I have to get this stuff done and there's not enough people. And now I have to do 2 jobs, 3 jobs, 4 jobs. Anybody who's ever been in the corporate world understands, when they downsize, the work doesn't go away, right? It's just that the people who are doing it go away. So if you're left, you're the one sort of holding the bag. And so it's a big problem for people. And also the people who are getting laid off, which from my experience and what I'm seeing seems to be an age thing. Of course, they'll never, admit that. But if you're 50 plus, you're probably going to be first. And then what are you going to do? Right. So that's an additional area of stress. And so, in my work, I help people sort of take a step back and think about, what do I really want my life to look like? Because we get on this treadmill, right? Of work, of kids, of family, of all of these obligations that we have. And we never really stop to think about, is this really what I want out of life? Right. It's like we get handed this set of expectations. And for many of us, it's fine. Many of us, it's like, yes, I have the same expectations of what I want my life to be. But for a lot of others, it's like, really? Is this all there is? Right?
Yeah.
And when we get to that point, that's where someone like me comes in to help you kind of figure out, like, first of all, the answer is no. It's never all there is, right? Because there's so many possibilities, but we just can't see them because we've never really been exposed to that.
Yeah, I love that. So, I mean, you asked some pivotal questions, and I think that they are questions that we need to stop to ask. I know, for example, when we work with our clients, one of our questions, on our intake form is, "Are you fulfilling your purpose?" And I will tell you that most people respond with a no, right? Like, don't feel like they're living on purpose. And that's, I mean, when it comes to our health, they've done research and studies, and it shows that when we have purpose and we feel like we're living on purpose, we have better health. We live longer. We're more satisfied. We're happier. So, and I agree with you, especially in this crazy day. There's a lot of comparison, right? Who's posting what on social media, and then people start to get down on themselves because you see just the ideal. You don't see all the struggles that people are going through. And then on top of that, there's just so much going on in people's life, from information overload to all of our different responsibilities. Like, life has such a faster pace, that I think overwhelm, burnout, like these become really big parts of people's lives. I mean, when people are, I think sometimes when people are in these experiences, they don't even recognize that they're there. Right. So how do you navigate that? Right. So I guess the first thing is, how do people begin to recognize where they are? Are they in this space of burnout or overwhelm?
Yeah. So one of the first indicators is that you're just tired. You're tired and you can't get any rest.
Yeah.
Because there's so much and you're completely overwhelmed with everything that needs to happen that you feel responsible for. And there's just no relief.
Yeah.
And secondly, like, you typically, and this may not be true for everyone, but typically we become a little crabby.
Yeah, irritability is real.
Yeah, because we don't feel good. Like, physically, you don't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to function at your best when physically you don't feel good, mentally you don't feel good. If you have like brain fog, like all these things are kind of symptoms of like something isn't right. Right. And oftentimes the circumstances and the physical symptoms, we have to pay attention to that, because what we try to do, most of us, we power through, right?
Yes.
Like, gotta go. Nope, the world is not going to stop because I'm going to keep it moving, right?
Yeah, exactly. So true.
And oftentimes the world will go on without us. Sorry to say, but nobody is superhuman and nobody is indispensable. And we sometimes feel like we're letting people down if we don't carry the whole weight of things on our shoulders. Mm-hmm. And that just leads to more sort of fatigue and burnout and overwhelm.
Yeah. So how do we, it's like being chained. How do we break the chains of that? Because it's almost like societally, these things have become like they've become the norm. Right. And even though they're not normal for the way that we should live, and they're not, benefiting us in terms of our health and our mood and our well-being and all of that. So how do we break those bonds?
Ideally, we make the choice, right? Ideally, we recognize that, okay, this just doesn't seem to be working for me anymore for whatever reason. Yeah. And I need to explore, right? Like, why is that? And what is it? Like, is it my travel schedule? Is it these activities in my personal life? Is it my boss? Is it my team? Whatever it happens to be. Is it my business? Is my business not feeding my soul anymore? Right. Unfortunately, what happens all too often is we get a wake-up call in the form of illness. Or some sort of, happening in our life that makes it impossible for us to ignore it anymore.
Yes.
We try to help people like recognize it before they get to that point. But if you do get to that point, instead of, like we said, powering through, take a step back. What can I do? What can I do to help myself? And in helping myself, help the situation or help other people. So, I know that you are in alignment with the phrase self-care is not selfish.
Yeah, of course.
But it is the thing that we neglect the most because everybody else comes first. And so that's probably the best place to start is how can I take care of myself? How can I refill my cup? And where is that going to come from? If we're in a situation with our work, it's a little bit easier to manage. If it's a situation with family or with, whether it's your own illness or someone else's, if you're a caregiver, that's a little bit harder to do because those obligations aren't, you can't necessarily change those, but you can change the way you are responding to it and how you're viewing it and change the things that you can change so that they support, what you need to be doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really great exercise is starting to kind of navigate or inventory. Okay, what is changeable? What's not changeable? And then also aligning. So these things, like which of these things are most important? Where do I want to put my focus and intention and stuff? And I know, Kate, that you are fantastic when it comes to helping people kind of find that clarity in their purpose. What are some of the questions, specifically that people should begin to ask themselves to help navigate those waters?
So the first question really is, first is, what do I want my life to look like, right? So that's where you start. But one of the really important questions is, what do I love to do?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes that is a key piece of your purpose, right?
Right.
We don't all love the same things. We don't all gravitate to the same things. And so if there's something that you have a passion for or that, maybe you used to, but you kind of got away from it, might be a good time to revisit that and think, okay, now what does that mean for me?
So true.
And when you figure out what you love to do, it might be a clue as to like, oh, this is something I need to do professionally, but it also might be something that can help you in your self-care. I worked with a woman once who, as we were talking, she mentioned that she used to love to dance. And so I was like, well, maybe you should add in see if you can find a dance class, that you can do in your free time.
Yes.
Well, she ended up doing that. And I talked to her like a month or two later. She's like, I'm getting into competitive dancing. She's like, I love this so much. And that was not her job. And so this was in addition to her job, but it just infused her whole life with joy. And so it changed everything for her. So if you can find something that you love and really sort of engage in that, whether as a hobby or as a business, that can make a really big difference.
I really love that, Kate. And I love the word that you used, joy. It feels like for so many people, that word has not become something that we've made as a priority in our lives. Like what really gives me joy? Because those are the things that we need to be filling our time and our space with, and like the woman, she needed to hold on to her job. That's fine. But she still found this other thing to bring her that place in her life where she could be self-expressed and fulfilled. And, I'm sure it looks different for everybody.
Oh, absolutely. And it's all very much about getting to know yourself, sometimes reintroducing yourself to yourself because we get so far away from who we used to be because of all of the things that go on in our lives. That it helps to get back in touch with what it is that you really enjoy doing. And then the second piece is, who do you most want to impact in the world, right? And if it's people that you currently have in your life, that's great. But if not, then look for ways to impact those people because we all have certain things that we are passionate about.
Right.
You and I are passionate about health and wellness and helping people to live their best life.
Yes.
And, we both have people that we want to impact, right? And so that is a clue to your purpose, right? Like, what do you love to do and who do you most want to impact? And then how do you do that, right?
Yeah.
How do you connect those dots? And that's kind of what we do at Changes Course is we help you connect the dots because your life experience too is really critical. Like I have a saying that and I won't say it exactly, but it's like stuff doesn't happen for no reason.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah.
And so any experience that you have in your life, whether it's positive, you view it as positive or negative, there's some learning there and there's some clues there as to, how you can move forward with that and get some clarity around what your purpose really is.
Yeah. Kate, how did you come into this line of work? Like, what's your story?
So I actually was working in America's favorite online retailer before it became quite as popular as it is. And my job, it was kind of a startup back then.
Uh-huh.
And so it was like, do more with less. This is not going to be unfamiliar to people with corporate jobs. Do more with less every year. Do more with less. And I was just to the point where I was like, I could barely get out of bed in the morning. And I would drag myself into work and I would be having a hard time, focusing and everything. And so finally, I actually found Changing Course. It was a program that had been developed by Dr. Valerie Young, and I trained as a coach in his method, the Life First, Work Second approach to career planning at that time. When Dr. Young was ready to move on to the Imposter Syndrome Institute, I actually bought the business with a friend. Or a partner, actually, so that we could continue her work because it is a very impactful method of, and it really isn't being taught anywhere else, shockingly, even though she's been doing it. The business has been around since 1986 or something.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'm pretty passionate because I had to do it for myself. Right.
Yes.
And that's often how we get to what we're meant to be doing is we need to learn something ourselves and then we want to teach it to other people. So that's how I got to where I am.
We go through those experiences. We're always taught that which we need to teach. Right. So, what would you say was as you were kind of going through this process yourself, what were some of those big aha moments, those big breakthroughs when you were like, oh, this is what Changing Course is about?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that was the hardest thing for me and the hardest thing for my clients is answering that question of what do you want your life to look like? Because we are raised to believe that our life is going to be a certain way. Because that's what we see around us. That's what our parents model for us. That's what our neighbors and, our schools and our churches and synagogues and all that. There's this societal belief of, well, this is what your life is going to be like.
Yes.
And for some, that's great because, like I said, it depends on how you're raised and what is in alignment with who you are.
Right.
But for some of us, not so much. Like we follow the path that's set out for us, but it never feels quite right. And we struggle to make our way on that path because we think it's the only path. And it isn't. And so that also can lead to a lot of physical issues, some mental health issues, if people just feel completely out of alignment with the way their life is. Right. And so what do you want your life to look like? And it's pretty granular. It's like, what time do you want to wake up in the day, right? Because it may come as a surprise to people that you don't have to get up in the morning if that's not who you are, right?
Yes.
Like if you're a night owl, maybe you can find something to do that starts at 5 o'clock in the evening. And I don't mean like working the night shift at your local factory, right? Like something that feeds your soul. And that's the other part of it, right? It's like you need to be able to feed your soul as well as your, bank account.
Yeah. I think that's really important. I don't think that we often stop enough to reflect on, well, what do we want our life to look like? We kind of feel like we're the passenger in the vehicle called our life versus actually being in the driver's seat of the vehicle called our life. But when we stop to think about, okay, well, how do I want my life to go? Then we start to be able to see, okay, well, here are the areas that are most important. Here's where I need to work. Here's where I'm going to take my life to this new level. Here's where I'm going to start to direct my life, as opposed to, again, being the passenger in there.
Yeah. And, there's the proverbial midlife crisis, right?
Yes.
And that's typically when we start to question those things. Because, we've done we've done the performance, we've gotten the education and the job and had the kids and the marriage and, whatever else that entails. And then we're like, okay. And this happens a lot for empty nesters too, because now they're like, okay, I've spent this whole, past 20 years, focused on raising my children. And now what about me? Right?
Exactly.
And so that can be a big awakening for people too, because they start to think, oh, what do I want to do? Right?
Yeah.
And that's definitely when you can start to think, what do I want my life to look like?
Yeah. Understood. Sometimes it takes something big for us to kind of wake up and see it, like you said before. I know in my practice, we see a lot of women who are at that age where their children are all grown and they've had this identity as like being a mom. And that was like the biggest part of their identity. And now that responsibility is like, it's not there anymore. And they're like, I don't know who I am anymore. Like, Who am I? What am I going to do? Like, what is my purpose?
Well, they say that, first it was life begins at 40, now it's 50, now it's 60, whatever it is. But, midlife is really, especially for women, when we kind of get going, right? It's like, we've, like you just said, like we've done our stuff. And now it's like, okay, now I get to focus on what I want to bring to the world. And that's where the purpose comes in. It's like, what do you want to bring to the world? What legacy do you want to leave for your children, right? Unfortunately, this also comes up when people are hit with a major illness.
Yeah.
And they either can't go back to what they were doing, or they realize that maybe what they were doing is partially to blame for this illness. And so that's another time when people start to really revisit, like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And what is it that I want to do before I'm done?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it is, it's really about just taking responsibility, right? It's about stepping up and being like, oh, okay, I am responsible for my life and I can say how these things are going to go. And sometimes that's scary, right? Like, oh my gosh, do I really want more responsibility? Like, oh, I can say, oh, but if I say, then it means I'm going to have to start to do things differently. And then that means we're stepping outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
Why don't you suggest people navigate that? Because there can be a little fear or discomfort when it comes to that.
Yeah. Well, I highly recommend getting support from a like-minded community. Yeah. Right? Really important, because when you try to make a big change in your life, the people around you may not react positively.
That's true.
Because it impacts them too. Until you get to the point where it really is sort of, like you become that really joyful, happy person because you are in your flow and you're doing what you're meant to do and you found your purpose and you're just really sort of like feeling that meaning and fulfillment. That journey can be a little tough for everybody.
Sure.
And it can be really isolating. You can feel kind of alone if you're making these decisions that are kind of against what everybody else in your life is doing. And so it's super helpful to get, professionals like yourself to help, set a path or help with, the guidelines and help sort of like, coach them through it. And also to connect them with people who are in the same place or who have been there, right? I mean, we both have communities where we connect with people who support us and who help us to navigate, some of the challenges, which, I mean, I don't know about you, but I would not, I don't know if I would have gotten, to where I am without that, right? And I know, and we have a group at Changing Course of people, a membership group, and people come once a month and they talk about their challenges and they give each other advice. And it's super helpful just to have that support.
Yeah, community is really important. And I think, I see this all the time with all the technology and this, that, and the other that we have access to. We've forgotten some of that need to interact with other human beings. But you're right. I mean, number one, you need to have a community where you fit, where you belong, where people are, some communities, people are pulling you down, right? They want you to stay where you are, but you want to be in a community where people are going to help you grow. They're going to move you forward. They're going to help you get to your purpose and your mission and whatever it is that you're designing for your life as you design your life. And that community is important. And then having mentors who have been down the road, who this is what they do. They've got experience. They're watching, like the way that you do with the people that you work with, Kate. It's like you can look at exactly what's happening in their lives and what's going on. And it's kind of like, imagine it's a chess game. Kate's like, okay, I see if we move this piece right over here, then all of this here shifts. So it's important to have somebody who can see things that we ourselves can't see. Because sometimes we've got our blinders on. We can only see so much. But it's the stuff that's happening in the background that we can't see that makes the big difference. So having an expert there makes a world of difference. So that expert guidance, that community, those things are crucial to making any kind of change. I totally agree with you there.
Yep, 100%.
So what can we leave people with, right? What are some of the pitfalls that people, can be on the lookout for? And then what are some of the remedies for those pitfalls so that they don't fall into them?
So I would say that be on the lookout for what you're thinking, what you're feeling,
yes,
and how you're showing up every day.
Yeah.
Because those are indicators of whether you're in the right place or maybe a change is warranted.
Yeah.
And, we can push the thoughts out of our mind and we can, have that extra cup of coffee and, we can do what we can to push through. But at some point, it's not going to be enough. And, if you're not feeling good, get some help, right? To figure out what to do. But just take a step back and think in a perfect world, what would I want my life to look like? What would I want to be doing? How would I want to be feeling? And try to create a vision for that of where you want to go, and then find people to help you get there.
Yeah, if we don't know where we're going, it doesn't help very much, does it? We're just kind of walking around blind.
That's right.
You can't even create a pathway or directions to getting to where you go if you're not sure where you want to go.
And it doesn't have to be specific, right? I mean, people will come to you and say, I just want to feel better.
Yeah.
Right? Physically.
Yeah.
And you can help them get there. But that's a destination, right?
Yeah.
How to feel better physically. Okay, let's figure out what's going on with you and how to get you there. Right?
Yeah. I think the other thing that's too, I think sometimes people get stuck, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I see this with our clients a lot, Kate. Sometimes people get stuck, they don't want to necessarily say this is where they want to go or this is what they want to do, because it's almost like a commitment. But the beauty is when you're the director of your life or the director of your health, it means that you can change courses going to pull your tagline in there, your website line in there, but they can change courses at any time. That's the whole beauty of it. And sometimes I think we actually have to go down that path, right? We actually have to be like, okay, this is where I want to go. And you start going down that pathway and you're like, this isn't quite what I wanted. You know what? I'm going to go this way instead. And then you realize that, okay, this new direction was the direction that you were supposed to go all along, but you just kind of needed to, you needed to go the other direction first. I do believe, as one of my coaches always says, that everything is working out for your highest and best interest. It is my favorite line that I use all the time. So I think that's part of the journey. It's part of like sitting back and embracing it. Sometimes laughing at yourself, you know?
Yes. Well, you know, with using the sort of changing course analogy, you know, a sailboat doesn't go in a straight line, right?
Right.
You back and forth, you shift with the wind, you know where you want to go, but it's never a straight line. Right?
No, it's not.
And so, you know, and then if things change, if the weather changes, if the seas change, maybe you change your destination, right? But you've learned along the way more information to help you make that choice. And that's basically what we do with our Work at What You Love program. It is essentially like a whole bunch of like exercises to help you just be able to evaluate the opportunities, to understand what it is that you might want,
Right.
and then to be able to put that in context. And like I said before, connect the dots of, wow, okay, this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, then we have other programs to help you get there. But the first part is, you know, where you want to go.
Yeah.
And that before you can figure that out, you have to know that you want to go somewhere else. So, you know, for people who are perfectly happy where they are, that's awesome for them. But, you know, they don't come to either one of us if that's the case. So, you know, but it's really rewarding for me, at least, to see people sort of have those aha moments and make those choices that are going to make them happy. And, you know, when we're happy, everybody else around us is happy too.
Yeah, that's so true. It's the whole oxygen mask analogy, right? You've got to take care of yourself before you can take care of everybody else. And that's really, really key and important. All right, Miss Kate, tell me one thing you want everybody to leave with today. What's the one thing that's going to help them move the dial, either something new or an action you want them to take?
I would say the action would be like, just really think about, what do you want your life to look like? And realize that there's so many possibilities that you don't even know. Mm-hmm. So let the universe be your limit, right? Like there is no limit. Don't censor yourself. Just let it fly and see what dream you can come up with. Yeah. And then find someone to help you make it happen.
I love that. And Kate, tell us a little bit more about where people can learn more about you and your work and what you do as your purpose and mission and contribution in the world.
So the website is changingcourse.com. And right now we have an infographic, the 10 steps to escape the job world and create a life you love.
Okay.
That people can download for free.
That's awesome.
If they wanted to contact me, I'm Kate at changingcourse.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. We are blessed to have you here today. And I think we're all going to leave today a little bit more focus on what do we want our life to look like? Where are we going? And play with that. Because ultimately, that's kind of why we're here. So thank you so much. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone. This is Dr. D, reminding you to tune into your body, reconnect with what matters, and embrace the journey to true wellness. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to redefine their health. Let's keep redefining wellness and empowering change together. See you next Thursday for the next episode drop.